Hey YouTube, it's David from Live Forever Die Trying, and it's been a moment. In my last video I mentioned usually my reading slows down, or at least last year it slowed down in our busy season at work, which happens to be August through November, and I was worried that my reading speed was going to slow down. This year that's different. I have kept up pace and even finished my goal for the year, 52 books in 52 weeks. It's just the recording aspect has definitely slowed down. But with Nonfiction November here and time freeing up from work, I'm hoping to change that. Have a lot of video ideas, and the community here is growing like crazy big, which I'm super surprised and happy with. But also thankful. I've gotten a lot of messages from you guys asking if I'm okay. I know there's concern about the business being infected by the pandemic and whatnot, and y'all are great. I'm happy to say that I'm doing well, the family's doing well, and the business is doing well. Unfortunately, we know some close friends of the family that have contracted COVID. Right now, everybody's doing well, but it's just something that's, weighing a little bit. But all in all, that's really the only complaint I have at the moment, and they're on the path to recovery. So, all that negativity aside, today we're doing Nonfiction November. It's hosted by Book Olive and crew. I'll give all the links to that in the description below. But basically, we're just trying to, or they're trying to, encourage more people to start reading nonfiction, and I'm happy to make a little video in part of that. So, for Nonfiction November, there is 4 prompts that you can kind of play off of, interpret how you want to choose the books that you want to read for Nonfiction November. So let me pull those up real quick. Those 4 prompts are time, movement, buzz, and discovery. So I picked 4 books out that I'm planning on reading, plus I have an extra one I'll talk about at the end. Consider it like a TBR for November. I know it's pretty late, so it's unlikely you'll be able to read along once this comes out, but maybe you can still get some recommendations for some of your future reads. So, jumping right into the first prompt, we have time. And you know me, you know this channel, we're going to talk about a little bit of longevity and anti-aging. So the first book I have here is going to be The Ageless Generation by Alex Zoronikov, and it's subtitled How Advances in Biomedicine Will Transform the Global Economy. And so it's a little bit different from the more science-heavy ones that I typically bring onto this channel, in the fact that it's talking about longevity, but mainly talking about the implications with the economy. And I think this is a really interesting aspect, especially in regards to retirement. What does work mean for somebody? Right now there's a lot of arguments that we're just a cog in the system, we're grinding against something that really doesn't add anything to our life, in fact takes away from it. But in an age where you have an end to aging, or at least a radical life extension, we could see really huge shifts to how our economy works. When automation comes along, are we going to be doing these useless jobs anymore? If we have longer lifespans, are we going to be using that longer lifespan to garner more expertise in a given field, to make our job easier, or to find new ways to innovate? And I hope this book is going to shed a lot of light onto that, and not just be a book about compounding interest or something like that. I have high hopes. I haven't read any reviews for it yet, but looking forward to it. The second prompt was movement, and I took this in the scope of a political movement. I've been reading a lot of politics lately. If you've been following me on Goodread, everything from some conservative text to communist and everything in between. But kind of bringing it back US-centric a little bit, I picked up The War on Normal People by Andrew Yang. And I'm sure most of you are already familiar, but Andrew Yang was running for the 2020 Democratic presidential nominee on a platform of universal basic income. If you're not already familiar with that term, it's basically giving everybody a set amount of money to cover, which really can be used for anything, but to cover basic needs, just as a way of providing for people. And instead of welfare where you can be capped out, this provides a springboard. So if in welfare you can't make too much or you lose it, you get this no matter what, as long as you're a legal tax-paying adult. Well, actually I don't even know if you have to be tax-paying, just have to be a citizen. So there's a lot of theoretical advantages, and I'm really looking forward to this book to kind of lay them all out in text. But yeah, War on Normal People by Andrew Yang for Political Movement. The third prompt is buzz, and I think you'll see where I'm going with this. So this is Mescaline, A Global History of the First Psychedelic by Mike J. And this is a beautiful book. It's published by Yale University Press, and it's just printed. I don't know what it is. I don't know enough about books, but the paper that they used is just crisp. It's like almost got a slightly plasticky touch to it, but like it doesn't feel inorganic. It's nice, and has all these great diagrams in it, these photos of different plants. You got Huxley's Doors of Perception here, and pop culture references, and I'm really excited to read this book. It is a deep dive, everything from the history of mescaline within Native American culture to being co-opted in the 60s by your anti-Vietnam peeps and your hippie movement, all the way up to modern use. And honestly, out of the books I have right now, this is probably the one I'm most interested to dive into. For the final prompt, we have discovery, and this is probably my weakest connection to the actual prompts, but I just took it to mean as discovering something new, learning something, but hell, you can do that with any nonfiction book. And one of my books about biohacking, I mentioned that they talk about EMFs, electromagnetic fields, and how I thought that's very tinfoil hatty. I get what they're saying, it just seems like BS. Basically, we all have electricity in us. We have ion channels in our cells that mitigate certain actions, and our body runs off electricity. We have neurons that fire via electricity. So we run on it. EMFs are saying, Wi-Fi is hurting you, or electromagnetic fields are throwing off your natural bodily sequence. So I tried to pick up the most I'm so skeptical about this, the most sane book that I could, and if I read this and end up being a convert, I'm going to look back at this and laugh. But this is the non-tinfoil guide to EMFs, How to Fix Stupid Use of Technology by Nicholas Pineault. So part of the reason I chose this particular book on this subject is from what I've seen, it has the most evidence-based arguments for this phenomenon. Just as a quick example, if we look at chapter 6, it talks about, do we need more research? And as you flip through the book, you have these different articles that are referenced, different diagrams. Granted, diagram doesn't add scientific validity, but if we take a look at these 2 pages here, we have 6 citations on the bottom of each page for every study they're referencing. So if nothing else, as I'm reading this book, I will be looking at the studies and trying to form my own opinion. This is the book I feel most weird about right now. It could be cool, it could make me believe it, but I still have a gut feeling that I'm going to come off of reading this in a similar position to I am now, which is basically, I know EMFs are a thing, and probably strong EMFs are going to impact you, but I would hope, or I think right now, most of our levels are safe-ish. I don't know. We'll find out. And then finally, for Nonfiction November, not related to the event itself, but for a personal book club, we're going to be reading Weapons of Math Destruction, and this is by Kathy O'Neill, subtitled How Big Data Increases Inequality and Threatens Democracy. It's all about algorithms, and I haven't read into it too much, but what I think it's going to be talking about is different ways data are skewing technologies and kind of how it crafts society. From a lot of books I've read on medicine and life extension, they have a big problem right now is all the data they're using for those fields are coming from white men typically. Some stupid number, 80% of all test subjects are white dudes. So if you're a black woman, the data isn't meant for you. Or if there is differences in not that race necessarily dictates, but like sex definitely dictates a lot of how different medicines affect you, but it can create negative effects. Or I believe there's another study that was about crash test dummies, and they used male bodies for the crash test dummies, and it caused additional deaths in women. I will need a citation on that because that's strictly out of memory, but I believe that's what this book's going to be talking about, and if it is, then it should be a really good read. I will say for Nonfiction November, all these books are fairly short, less than 300 pages, so I'm hoping if I can get back into the swing of my habit that we'll polish all of these off and have a good wrap-up at the end of this month. That's all I got on the books themselves. I will say September and October were good reading months for me, so I will be coming out with postponed wrap-ups of each of those months individually. In addition, while I have not been recording videos, I have been drafting scripts. I'm going to be showing you my reading habits, kind of how I manage to read a book a week while maintaining a relationship. We actually just did a move-in, which is why I'm outside of this new property versus my old room, as well as working 50 hours a week. We just came off busy season. Granted, I have the pandemic keeping me at home right now instead of going out, but I figure that type of video could be helpful for somebody, or hopefully multiple somebodies. But yeah, if y'all have any other suggestions for stuff you would like to see, as always, leave that below, and hope to see more from y'all fairly soon here. Alright, see y'all around.